All right, give me one sec. I think it should work better right after this. All right, there we go. Sorry about that, Rohit. Does that look okay?
Yep, perfect.
All right, perfect. Appreciate the patience, guys. So yeah, we've got a pretty short agenda today in terms of slides. I really wanted to spend most of our time on the walkthrough. So I've got a couple of slides on just our technical integration, both our current and also a couple of our upcoming capabilities. Most of my focus today is going to be on HR. I'll try to touch on finance a bit as well. I have a lot less background there. So I'm hoping a lot of the high level, more functional pieces will relate to both. But if there are questions about, finance specifically, please you throw them into the chat at any time. And if I can't answer, I'll definitely try to get more information on it. But, most of what I wanted to walk through today is, really live what we'll do within Workday to use our activities, how to configure them within Studio, if there's any part within Orchestrator, what to do as well. And then I've got a pretty simple demo using a Workday operations, so a SOAP API that you should be able to set up with the Workday sandbox. But I also wanted to show a couple more advanced features or, advanced demos, including a couple of recordings with Workday Extend. I've got one with Adobe PDF services to generate an offer letter, and one that I set up about 20 minutes ago with a chatbot. So I'll try to run that live. What could go wrong? But yeah, I'd love to run through at least a few of those demos. Provide some detail on how they were set up, and definitely spend some time on Q&A after all of that. I hope there's some questions, and I hope some of this is relevant to what you guys do. But yeah, just jumping right into it. I wanted to start with a little bit of info on what we currently have and what we have coming up in terms of integration, because most of what we're going to talk about today is our Workday activities within Studio. So those are available both on-prem and automation cloud users. There are quote unquote classic activities that allow you to launch EIBs within Workday, invoke Workday SOAP API operations, use Workday's report as a service API to get reports and run those, include those within your workflow. But then we also do have integration service or a connector for Workday within integration service coming out early next year. So that's going to include some exciting stuff like triggers within integration service for things like new records and updated records with some of the items that I have in the bottom right here. So a lot more information coming out on those, but at least a little bit of a sneak peek, as those are coming together. But another really exciting piece that we have is, I've been working really closely with Workday to try out some of their functionality within Workday Extend. So that is a paid add-on within Workday, but it's got some really great extensions, including a UiPath extension that allows you to trigger UiPath automations directly from Workday events. And I've got a demo for that. I have to say, while working with them on that, it was really exciting to see that direct event trigger within Workday with, really pretty simple configuration and a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do. And then, thinking forward to integration service for, there's a lot of cool ways to use Workday events to dynamically trigger robots as well. So I'll get into that a lot more when we get into some of the architecture and some of the mockups that I have here. But getting into the activities, because I'm going to focus on those quite a bit today. It really is it's a bi-directional, based on how you use it, but it's primarily one way with the SOAP APIs, where we're mostly reading information from Workday to UiPath, but we've also got ways, if we invoke EIBs or Workday SOAP APIs, to then write data back into Workday. So the activities have just a couple of core functions. So there's that standard connection authorization step where, we always recommend using integration system user accounts or, something like that based on your Workday governance. But, you could also use a user account just for testing and evaluation if you'd like. But basically, once you're authenticated, you've got access to, the Get Workday report, the Launch EIB, and the Invoke Workday operation activities with, wizards for each one. I'll show an example of at least a couple of them just as we're walking through demos today, but that's really the meat of the integration that we're going to talk about today, but then I'll also touch on extend. So without getting too much into detail on use cases, and actually, yeah, we get a little bit here. I've got a couple more use cases coming up with more specific details, but at a very high level within HR, I think we see a lot of activities from the HR user perspective. So that could be, help me out with activities like, compiling a report, exporting a report, generating letters, performing some cross-system activities to gather data and then putting that data into Workday. There's also a lot of end user HR focused activities like, onboarding, help me with my onboarding, help me with maybe some type of upgrade request or a benefits request or a payroll change, things like that. And then within finance management, I think we see a lot of data-driven workflows that could end up with, outputs in Workday around payroll or audit or, other things like that. For both finance and supply chain, they're all API driven. We definitely recommend using APIs versus UI for Workday unless you're doing application testing. And then there's also, across, different lines of business, there's a lot of cross-system things that we'll talk about in just a minute. So I'll come back to the quiz. I did want to pull up one additional slide just for some context before our quiz. A lot of what I'm going to focus on today is a couple of personas. So the big one is as a line of business user within Workday. So within finance, within HR, I've got a lot of activities, that I perform on behalf of end users and employees. So, I'm basically, like a contact center agent, like other line of business users, I've got different activities to fulfill different things, on behalf of a user, such as submitting benefits on their behalf, setting up some type of approval workflow to get something approved. So acting on maybe a request from the user, generating letters, documents, anything that requires sort of that elevated privilege of the HR user that can't really be done self-service. So there's a lot of unattended style activities there, whereas the HR user or the finance user, my event triggers or other types of triggers are going to kick off unattended automation from UiPath, which then can incorporate AI, incorporate IDP, use UI automation, do all those different things as part of the workflow, and then send the results back to Workday. And then similarly, from an unattended standpoint, I might have my assistant as an HR user or my, or as a finance user, I'll have my UiPath assistant. I might have a couple of contextual tasks like, generate a daily report, something like that, process a document, do something with it. But I also, on the attended side, I really wanted to focus on what end users can do as well. And I'll go into a scenario in just a second, but there's a couple of different ways to act on a lot of these types of requests. So as an end user, I might make the request directly via chat, via a self-service portal, via an automation with an assistant, and that could be submit my benefits, make a change, pull some data from a report or request a report, something like that. And then on the other side, I could then have an HR user doing the same on my behalf. So it's a couple of different ways to trigger the same type of process in both unattended and attended ways. So I'll pause there. Rohit, would you mind pulling up the first quiz question? And then I wanted to get into a couple of use cases that sort of reflect a lot of this.
Sure. Let me share my screen. I'm just posting the link for the quiz on the chat. So I would request everyone to join on that link. You can also go to www.menti.com and write the code on the top. Oh, sorry. Sorry guys, just a sec. it. Please join the link again. I'll just start the session once more. Same one. Present, and here we are. We have 29 people. I hope all of you have joined. I'm going for the question now. And here we go. Here's the first question. What integration method do the Studio Workday activities use? You have the options: SOAP APIs, UI automation, Magic. We have one more person. Yeah, all of you have answered. And the answer is SOAP APIs. So here's the trick. Please make sure that you don't just have to answer it correctly, you also have to answer it the fastest. So we can see who is there on the leaderboard at this point.
Wow, it's really close.
So that's very close. Good that we have 3 more opportunities during the course of the session. Mohan, you are there who answered the fastest as well as correctly. We'll just quickly go on to the next question as well. Here we go. The Workday activities are available on Automation Cloud only, both on-prem and Automation Cloud, or they are coming soon. We have last 10 seconds. Almost everyone has answered. 3 more to go. Okay, cool. Again, most of you have answered it correctly. Let's quickly go on to the leaderboard before we continue with the session.
Yeah, that was a tricky question.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Terry took the lead.
Oh, it's
Oh, never
Lasheka.
mind. Someone was
Yeah,
real fast. Yeah.
it's very close. It's very close. Good that we have 2 more opportunities with the 2 more questions, which will be closer to the end of the session. So please do stay tuned, and we will be building on this and hope. And that's an opportunity for others also to take the lead. Yeah, Mo, you can take it up from here.
Cool. Yeah. So just a couple more slides just for some context. And yeah, we're really going to jump into a walkthrough with a lot of live elements, because I think Workday is fairly complex. There's quite a bit to cover on that side. But for just a little bit more context, I talked to a lot of our internal COE folks. We've got some really great Workday automation internally. And there's really both with what we do within UiPath, what we see with customers, there's a lot of, using HR as an example, there's a lot of different areas where, there's a lot of great automation potential with a lot of related processes where, automation is going to be a part of a lot of multi-system, multi-LOB type activities. So really common ones are onboarding and offboarding, where there might be an IT element. I've got a demo example with Workday, with ServiceNow, with others, but there's really going to be a lot of whether it's identity management, whether it's documentation for badging, or anything like that. There's a lot of different activities that I think automation can help string together. For things like onboarding, for offboarding, within talent acquisition, a lot around maybe, doing public searches, helping categorize and, performing other, initial gathering tasks for candidates, things like that. All the way until the hire process, which then will begin in Workday with the pre-hire and the job requisition type activities and things like that. And then also across compensation and benefits, learning and development, signing up for trainings, telling users, using different user interfaces when they've got an upcoming training or they've missed a mandatory training, something like that. And A lot that can incorporate things like chat. So I've got a really simple chat demo coming up, but we see a lot of opportunities, just like any service desk, for a lot of self-service, which then could incorporate approvals or decisions from an HR or finance worker, but also sort of provide that user side as well as that line of business specialist sort of assistant side, with automation on both. So I'll show for a little bit more context on that. What I was thinking about today is, a couple of simple patterns where a lot of what I'll do as, let's say, an HR worker or a supply chain or finance worker is I might have a bunch of like a daily task, a week task, something report driven, where my manual task might be, let me pull a report from Workday. Let me generate a document based on that. So it could be an offer letter if I'm a recruiter. It could be, let's pull together a contract. Let's put together a requisition, something like that, based on that initial report data. And then where UiPath can help a lot is we can then scrape data from other applications, we can query databases, we can pull things from any type of custom or legacy application that doesn't have APIs. And then the downstream actions could be, let's put together that letter, let's use something either within Workday or something like Adobe PDF services. Let's send it out for a signature. Let's make updates in additional systems. And then, of course, all those changes and all the relevant data can be synchronized back to Workday. So in this case, what's beginning with a Workday report that I've got different processes, building data for that report can then lead to all these different downstream workflows and, end up back in Workday with updated data. So, really quick example I have of this, and I'll actually come back to this demo, but, just to walk through a real life scenario that I've got a video of, we see a lot of requests for letter generation, especially around offers, things like that. So you can have a really simple sequence of, I kick off my process from Workday. I use our get report activity to pull data, maybe in raw JSON, maybe in a data table from Workday. And then as I parse through all the different items, let's say all the candidates that are in a specific stage, like they're at an offer stage, that's where I could go for, I can take each row and then I can connect with UiPath to Adobe PDF services. I can generate a letter one at a time. And then I can invoke Adobe Signs. So I could actually, facilitate that, the digital signature step by Adobe Sign to the external user. The candidate signs it, the data comes back, and then I see it within Workday, as well as maybe a collaboration tool like Slack. And again, I'll come back to that example because within that context, I really wanted to walk through a couple of scenarios that relate to this pattern here, where there's a lot of different use cases that traditionally could start with the line of business user. So again, as an HR worker, as a someone in finance, I could kick off a process, but instead of kicking off a process via Assistant or UiPath, I could do it via Workday events. So when I'm just doing my regular day-to-day job, I've made an update, I've submitted, I've moved the candidate into that offer stage by approving it, by submitting it, etc. And then based on those events and based on different trigger methods, I can have an API call made to UiPath Orchestrator to kick off either a job directly or set up a queue item, which I'm going to show in a demo in just a second. So that queue item can then trigger an unattended robot. The robot can do things like, let's say in an onboarding scenario, like what I'll show, it can generate credentials, it can perform request fulfillment. So it can order me a laptop, order me a secure ID token, sign me up for a training. So perform tasks like signing up for a training, scheduling, orientation. That could be human in the loop, asking for decisions or input from the line of business specialist, or it could be fully unattended. So it could be I have all the information I need. I'll sign them up for their mandatory training, and let's notify them through multiple channels. So that could be a return phone call, a return SMS. That can be updating a portal on the HR user side, but then also updating, let's say, an onboarding or new hire portal on the user side. And so if we think about that exact same type of scenario, what I want to try to show today is there's also a lot of opportunities for an end user to kick off that request themselves via some type of self-service mechanism. So, in my case, I'm going to use a chatbot, but that could be one of those onboarding new hire portals, anything like that. But once the user has made that initial request, that can then kick off a very similar process that can go to the line of business user for approvals. but otherwise be largely unattended. And then the line of business user gets the output. So they get, this user has completed their onboarding, they're signed up for their training, their checklist is complete, their laptop has been ordered. Here's a record of what the order was with a transaction ID, something like that. So the simple, the simple type of sequence, and I've got sort of an updated, enhanced version of this, is again, as an HR admin or a line of business user, I can kick it off, an unattended robot can take over. I can perform actions in line of business systems like Salesforce, like ServiceNow. I can also generate an audit trail by Excel, putting log data, into whatever applications you're using. It can add log data via orchestrator, push it out to Splunk, etc., and then send notifications via Slack, Teams, other collaboration tools. So UiPath really is taking that Workday event or taking that trigger from a system like Workday, and then doing a bunch of things across different applications with it. Or Workday could be a destination. Workday could be, based on something that I've triggered by a chatbot. From a user perspective, Workday could be one of the many systems of record that I update, across all these different tasks and actions. So before we go into a quiz, I wanted to show at least one of the demos first. So I apologize. I was trying to get a lot of this working live earlier and had some issues. So I'm just going to run a video just to be completely safe. But this is something that we set up working directly with Workday using their Extend tool. So it was really exciting to kind of get our hands on Extend to try out some of the things that they had on their side. And the really big addition that we got via Extend here, and I'll pull the video up, is instead of doing something like going to my assistant or kicking off an automation through, all those traditional methods that, we've talked about in the past or that you use every day, we wanted to use a direct Workday event with an instantaneous trigger to an unattended robot. So what I've got on the left here is, I'm an HR user here. I've got my, task list of all the approvals I need to make. I've got all of these different candidates at the offer stage. I want to go ahead and, I'll hit submit to approve them. And then what's going to happen is that's going to immediately kick off the unattended robot on the right. So that's just an unattended robot on a VM, and it's going to perform a whole bunch of actions. So it's going to do a couple of things, but it's, yep.
Sorry to disturb you. Are you
No
sharing your
problem.
screen? We are not able to see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me one sec. Was I not sharing the slide either? I'm sorry about that. Let me.
Thanks.
I'm really sorry about that. Give me one sec. Could you guys see the PowerPoint slide right before this?
Yes, now we can see that.
Okay, perfect. Well, just in case that wasn't showing before, let me just pull this up one more time real quick. Because again, what I'm going to walk through here is sort of the bottom row of the line of business user kicking off a process. They're going to use Workday Extend, via the event, like the submit event or the approval event, etc., to create a queue item in Orchestrator, kick off an unattended robot, and the unattended robot does all those different things like generating credentials, creating a laptop order request, signing the user up for training, etc. So apologize again if I was talking through it without sharing, but on the video here, so I've got my line of business user screen on the left. I've got my VM with an unattended robot on the bottom right, and I've just got a little bit of a like status tracker on the top right. So if I press play, what I'm going to do first here is, as the HR user, I'll click on submit. So that means I'm approving the onboarding initiation for a brand new hire. So as soon as I've marked that as complete, you'll see the unattended robot kick off on the bottom right. So as the unattended robot's working, it's making API calls to ServiceNow. So you'll see there's a new user credential set up just within ServiceNow here. And you'll also see the hardware request. So I'm just using an incident here to track the hardware request via the robot. Now in the bottom right, you can see the unattended robot doing some UI automation. So we've got like a legacy order form and a trading form. So the robot's going to actually type through all of that for you, or really for the user. And that unattended robot can also interact with local files. So if you've got a tracking file, in this case, we've got a simple spreadsheet, we can make updates to that. And then the really cool thing, using a combination of Extend and our Workday activities is I can not only send notifications via Slack, via email, to both the end user and their manager, but as the HR user, I can also go to my dashboard and I can get live or, really whenever I want to look at them updates on all these different actions. So I can take a look at my queue, my workload, I can trigger it as soon as I've done, an action like submitting or completing, and then I can always check the status in the dashboard that I had right here. I'll just pause on it real quick. So what we did is, we found it was really easy to make that API call back to Workday. And then you can have a dashboard like this. So we're taking some data points like the ServiceNow URL once I generate an incident, the booking confirmation, based on what I've done with that legacy form, the class name, etc., and we can send it right back to Workday. So for a second demo, and this is the one again I set up right before this call, one of our tech partners, Amelia, was kind enough to set up a chatbot with a couple of conversations for this. So I'm going to try to pull it up live and see if we can get this one running, because I wanted to show that same type of flow just from the user, from a self-service perspective. So give me 1 sec just to pull up a couple of things here. If you've never seen Amelia, this example does have a live avatar. It talks. I think it's going to talk as we're going through. So a lot to show there. So I've got my chat window. So as an end user, I'm on. I've got my chat on the left, and then let's pull up maybe just a couple of browser windows to show the results on the right. So yeah, I've got my ServiceNow screen. So I could be an IT admin, I could be the HR user looking at ServiceNow, but that's where I'll see some of the outputs or results of that workflow that I'm running. And then as an HR user, I've also got just my, my candidate information here. So I've got that brand new hire for, Modemo is the name I put in here for a staff recruiter. And they're brand new. They were just added recently as part of one of those onboarding workflows. So, or one of those add new hire task workflows within Workday. And so what I'll do is, let me just pull up 1 or 2 more things off screen. I think I'm ready to run this. So on the chat on the left, Amelia is asking, in fact, let me just refresh to make sure. So I can say something simple like, I'm a new employee.
Hey, I am Amelia. How can I help you today?
So I need to complete my onboarding.
I see you need a secure ID token, VPN access, and have to complete your mandatory cybersecurity training. Would you like me to request the token and access and sign you up for the training?
So I can say yes here.
A UiPath robot is completing your equipment request. You will receive the confirmation via email once it's completed. Is there anything else I can help you with?
So the prompts I have there are pretty small, but I'll show the results as they're coming up. So what I've got here is that credentials were generated. So if I look in ServiceNow, as soon as it refreshes, I've got my new record for Modemo that was just created. And then it also said my incident was created. So I'll look at within my incidents. I've got my new hardware request. It's performing that same UI automation on behalf of the user on the left. So that's an attended robot doing all of that. It's going to sign me up for my mandatory training. So it's saying mandatory new equipment training. It's putting in all the information from Workday. And then as soon as that step's done, it's going to take a second to make an API call to Workday. And that's going to be just taking a record of that that form that I just submitted and putting it into Workday. So if I now go to my to my HR window on the bottom right, as an HR user, if I'm looking up this this user, if I go to the documents, give me one sec. Should be a document screen in here. Sorry, give me one sec. I'm trying to remember where the documents go. Here we go. Sorry about that. So within my personal information, I made an API call to documents. And what you'll see is I've now got that form uploaded just a second ago. And that's going to be basically a record of what the robot did via UI automation just in the browser. So again, as an end user, I kicked off via chat my attended robot to help me out. It created my credentials in ServiceNow. It submitted an incident on my behalf in ServiceNow. It also filled out the UI automation for training and for the order request here. And then it made an API call to Workday. So very simple example. I was trying to set up something a little more complex using some of the supply chain or open requisition and ordering type functions within Workday. I didn't really get a chance to finish those today, but just wanted to show an example of sort of that bidirectional round trip type of automation that can end up with the result within Workday. So I'll pause there. Were there any questions about anything that was shown there before I go into a little bit more hands-on within Studio? Because I know I covered quite a bit in a pretty quick time.
You can post your questions on chat, or you can just unmute yourself and speak as well. I think Mo, we can go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If we don't have questions yet, let me pull up Studio, and I did want to walk through how to set up the activities. So let me pull up a fairly simple workflow within Studio. I'll drag it over in one sec. So I've been fighting a slow computer pretty much the entire morning. So I think it's loading. So a couple of things in terms of setup. So from an orchestrator and UiPath perspective, if I go to orchestrator, I've just set up a couple of things here where the important one is I've set up my integration system user account credentials within Orchestrator as an asset. So I've got my username and password stored here. So within my workflow, I'm going to pull those in, and I'm going to extract out just the username and the password to use across my workflow. And then for the Workday application scope I have here, if you go to manage packages and within official or marketplace, if you search for Workday for legacy projects, you'll get Workday activities. You can add those. That's our classic activities that are available on-prem and on Automation Cloud. And as soon as I've set that up for design time, I've got just my simple credentials, my tenant and my tenant URL here. So I'll put in my password here for design time. But I did want to show within Workday where you get that tenant URL, because this part's a little bit more tricky. It's not as intuitive if you've never used Workday before. So if I go back to my Workday screen, yep. So I can search for public web services. And just as an example, within my public web services, if I pick any of these, really any of them, and I go to web service and view the WSDL, all the way at the bottom of that, there's going to be a soapbind line. So it's the soapbind address location. Now this URL, again, this isn't super intuitive, but this URL up till that specific API endpoint is going to be what you select. And a little note is make sure you don't put that slash at the end. So if I take that URL from, again, any of these public web services, the WSDL, within UiPath or within Studio, I'll put that here. And I also get my tenant name at the end. So the tenant name is going to be after service. It's going to be, whatever you have at the end there, I can connect. And then within my application scope, once I've put in that tenant name and URL for runtime, because again, that was design time within the wizard there, I can do all those different things. Like if I search for Workday within activities, I can do things like get report, invoke operation, which is all the public SOAP API endpoints that are available, and launch EIB if you built out electronic interface builders within Workday. So simple example is if I invoke a Workday operation, I can use something like get workers. So if I just search for, and I've noticed it is a little funny within dark mode, so you actually have to go over each one just to see it. But for get workers, like what I selected here, I've got just, again, a very basic example where the only input variable I'm going to put in is give me one sec. I think I have at least one input here, but if not, I think I'm just doing that output. So I'm taking the get workers response from that endpoint for get workers. So give me one second to go through it again. Yeah, so I don't have a filter or anything like that set here. So it is going to just get the get workers output. And what I can do is I can put that into a data table. And then for each item that I get in the response, so again, the critical part here is I put in a for each, and then my item type is, or my object type is a worker. So all I've written out is get workers response and then response data. It's going to parse through that response data, look for each worker, and then I'll go ahead and assign the business title, the name, the date of birth, the user ID, are they active, and the data. So all of that coming from Workday, and then I'll generate my data table and I'll set up an Excel report. So if I run that right now, it's going to authenticate to Workday. It's going to run that operation and pull the data out. And then it's going to structure it into that Excel file that I need just as a simple output example. All right, and Excel just flashed up on my other screen for 1 sec. So if I go to my project folder where I save the file, I've got this file right here. So if I pull it up in Windows Explorer, I've got my file that was just updated, and if I pull it up, that's going to be data from Workday. So I've got all this data that came out in the structure that I have, just that I have set within my workflow. So it's appending here. I could delete all of this. I could generate a new report every morning. I can append. I can put in logic to identify new items, anything like that. But again, very simple example just to get started with the out-of-the-box activities using just a public API call. So you can use the get workers endpoint on any sandbox that you have access to within Workday, and then you can just put that response as your output. So I'll pause there. Any questions on Studio? Otherwise, I've got one more quick demo just showing some integration between Workday, UiPath, and Adobe PDF services.
How you are uploading the file in the Workday with the UiPath?
So loading the Excel file or pulling the data out of Workday.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I might have misunderstood the question, but just to clarify, what we're doing within this invoke Workday operation is we're getting a Workday data set, within a Workday variable type by making that API call to Workday, and then we're pulling data out of it. So we'll get that response that we've set up here. So that get workers response, the data type is going to be Workday specific, but then I can parse through that and then pull each of the workers within that result, basically. And then once I've got that, I can put it in a data table, I can put it directly into Excel, I can insert it one at a time into Salesforce or any other application or SAP that I'd like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's for to fetch the data from the Workday. Whether we have to update the data into the Workday, how we can do it?
So that's going to be a different API call. That's going to be using, so just as a simple example, and I apologize, I don't have as much Workday admin experience, so I don't know all the endpoints as well as a lot of our Workday admins do. But if we look up either a put or a post, so I think it's going to be either post or submit. Let me look up workers and see what we have here. There should be at least one right, but otherwise it's going to be a different endpoint for actually updating data into Workday. So I don't have the best answer on that, but I know I've definitely seen it done. It's just a matter of really knowing what that API call is, and then you kind of do the reverse. You could start with a spreadsheet, you could save your data in UiPath as variables, and then you could reference those within a post versus a get or a put.
Yeah, we have one question on chat, Mo. I mean,
Sure.
a couple of questions here. One is, what was the manage package item to add in Studio?
Yep. So one quick note is currently the packages work with Windows Legacy, which is being phased out or is being deprecated soon. We have it. We have it in progress to be compatible with Windows or Cross. So actually, real quick, just to make sure no one gets tripped up on this, when you start up a new process, by default in 22.10, it's going to default to Windows compatibility. For now, if you're using Workday, use Windows Legacy, and you can update your project as soon as the packages are available, with Windows. But within Windows Legacy, if I go to Manage Packages, then I'll see the Workday activity in our two feeds. So give it a second to load. Again, if I'm in Windows Legacy project type, sorry. I'll go to Manage Packages. So go to either the official or marketplace feeds. And then if you search for Workday, you'll see the UiPath Workday activities with the official UiPath logo, and it will have a doc link to the project information as well, which it's not an integration. So yep, that's something that needs to be updated. But give me one sec. So within UiPath activities, if I go down to Workday, I'll see documentation for Workday as well. So these are the activities that we just pulled up, and yeah, that's how you get to them. So for official or marketplace, currently only in Windows Legacy, but that's going to be updated very soon. Did that help? And I did see somebody ask for the API documentation. Let me pull. Let me send a couple of links, both within the chat, but then we'll also include it on the deck that'll be available on the session recording tomorrow. And I see a question from Pratik and a couple of others. So for giving the list of endpoints based on user access, if I understand that correctly, there are API endpoints for user access within Workday, but Pratik, if you have any detail on that question, because I might be misunderstanding it, please feel free, just either in the chat. So I see the second part from your question. So the activities get access to all of the public web services, so all the public SOAP endpoints within Workday.
Hey, sorry. So my question was regarding, like, when a user gets authenticated through integration services, is he getting the access to all the endpoints, or like is it depending upon some services that you want to showcase through Workday?
I think that's gonna depend on how the user account is set up, but I believe it's the latter in most cases. So by default, I think you get access to all the public endpoints, but how you granted access within your deployment is going to drive what they get access to, is I believe the answer.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll try to pull up a document just to send out in just a second. I think we've got time. I can pull up one more quick demo, and then just showing that showing the offer letter generation, and then I think we've got quiz. We've got one more quiz, and then we've got time for more Q&A as well right after that. So give me one sec. Let me pull this up. And Rohit, I'm still sharing my screen, right, with PowerPoint up right now?
Yes, yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, just want to make sure I didn't lose it again. Just waiting for the video to come up. There we go. All right, so one last demo, and again, most of the ones that I have here are pulling information from Workday. So I apologize, I didn't have too much in the other direction. But in this case, I'm going to take raw JSON data from Workday, kicked off via assistant, so kicked off via an attended robot. And the data is going to then be parsed by UiPath. So we're going to take that raw JSON, we're going to find each candidate at that stage. And then one by one, we're going to connect the Adobe PDF services and generate an offer letter. And then I'm going to skip the Adobe sign part for now. I've got a second video for that, but just to show a little bit of that integration, I did want to just play through it real quick. So the robot's getting the data from Workday. You're going to see the raw JSON data that we pull out. So we haven't done any type of filtering or anything like that. And then we'll structure that output and then take each individual candidate out of the JSON. So I'm doing that just via a couple of different activities, but you'll see that I've got my candidate on the right for the first row within that raw JSON output. And the structured data, put into a very specific JSON format is now going to be entered into Adobe PDF services, and that's going to be used to generate an offer letter. So as a user, I'll see that offer letter, and that's going to incorporate all that information from the JSON that I pulled out of Workday. So again, pretty simple example. You can use our HTTP request activities, so our standard API activities. You can use the Workday get report or a invoke Workday operation. So any of those can be used to then pull the data from a report in JSON format, in a data table format, really however you set it up, and then you can do things with it like generate a letter with a third-party service like Adobe PDF services. So I'll pause there. I think we've got time for the last two quiz questions, and while we're doing that, I'll try to pull together some docs and put them into the chat.
Awesome, perfect, thank you. So everyone, just please go to the same link, menti.com. I will share my screen to where we left off there. We already completed 2 questions. We have 2 more questions to go. This is the leaderboard. You have plenty opportunity to make a comeback. So just going back on the rules again, you obviously have to answer the question correctly, but you also have to answer it the fastest. So if you have missed it, just go to www.menti.com and use the code 3814854 to join. We have 28 people here. I'll just wait for 5 more seconds before I go to the question. Okay, cool. I think we can go. And here we are. What? Just a sec, guys. Sorry. Yes, here we are. So here's question number 3, and we go. The question is: the studio activities allow you to integrate with reports, Workday operations, and EIBs, Workday console, Workday permissions. We have last 10 seconds on the clock. Let's report Workday and or Workday operations and EIBs. So you almost all of us got that right. Let us see where we stand on the leaderboard. Okay, I think we are gonna have a shift. Okay, Lasheka, you're still leading, but you're not leading by much. Akshaya, Kanchan, Mohan, you still have one more chance for taking this home. And we quickly go on to the next question. You can also integrate with Workday APIs using a different kind of magic, the website, activities, HTTP client pack and studio, and a special desktop application. Correct. Almost everyone got this right. Now we'll see the leaderboard and where we stand.
Oh man, it's gonna be close.
That is very, very close.
Oh, good
Congratulations,
job.
Lisheka. Please do share your message, your email ID on the Zoom chat with me personally. I will share the gift with you. Everyone else, we will keep doing these sessions. We have one more tech integration series already lined up for December 15th. I will be sharing the link for that. So please do join there as well for chance to learn a lot, obviously, and also get some amazing rewards. Please do share. Lasheka, please do share your email ID. Yes, I already got it. Thank you so much. Mo, you can take it up from here.
Cool. Yeah, so that's most of what I had to show today. I'm definitely going to make sure we add all the resources and links to the end of the deck that's going to be attached to the event that we're going to send out tomorrow. But yeah, I want to spend just a couple more minutes if there's any more Q&A, anything else people wanted to see based on all the different things that were shown today, because I know it was quite a bit pretty quickly. And if we don't have any Q&A, Rohit, we can probably close out, and I'm going to see if there's any other helpful links to include here. But I think that's pretty much what we had for content today.